Hi, this is Shu with a review of the Kyrie 8, or Nike likes to call it Kyrie Infinity. They're kind of switching back and forth just in case Kyrie doesn't play or does decide to play. I guess they could say, oh, this wasn't the Kyrie 8, this was the Kyrie Infinity. We're going to have the actual Kyrie 8 now that Kyrie's coming back to the court. I don't know what the deal is, but it's quite intriguing. First look at the design, it looks very lazy. It reminds me of the John Wall 1 from Adidas, which was a pretty ugly shoe. I love the fact that they're messing with this camo type of pattern and whatnot, so it's good. Ventilation, not that great. There's another layer underneath this starchy, plasticky material. For size 9.5, it weighs about 380 grams. So it's really lightweight and it feels light, lighter than what the digits show. That's always a plus. The padding is super plush all around the ankle, the Achilles heel and everything. The heel cup is there to get the job done, but it's pretty big. So depending on how narrow your foot is, you might want to try it out and see if it's a bit too roomy or not for you. For me, it was okay. The midsole is injected Phylon. They do have a zoom air on the forefoot, and it's not zoom turbo this time. It's zoom strobel, so you can see it protruding right inside there, right? It's right there, and you're in direct contact with the zoom air, and it's wider than ordinary zoom strobels. It's just on the forefoot, and it's wider than ordinary zoom strobels, but it's a little bit smaller and narrower than a zoom turbo. But it feels pretty much the same as a typical zoom turbo Kyries in the past. Actually, it feels closer to zoom strobel shoes than turbo. I think it's better than zoom turbo in some sense, because you feel a lot plusher on the forefoot. The downside is the heel. They do have a zoom air, a rectangular zoom air on the heel, but as you can tell, this is very, very thin. As in, the foam surrounding the zoom air on the heel is super thin, and because of the zoom strobel, it's elevated compared to the heel, and the zoom air is a lot more resilient, and you can feel your heel sinking down quite considerably compared to your forefoot. So that's going to be a killer when you wear shoes like that, unless you're wearing jump soles to improve your jumping capabilities and plyometrics. A sunken heel is never good for you. It can be fatal for your Achilles heel, and it can provide a lot of unnecessary strain to your calf muscles and whatnot. And of course, retards your response speed as well. So that's a really dumb move on the part of Nike. They could have added a bit more foam or have the zoom air elevated or whatnot. But that's a killer deal breaker for me. Good that they put zoom air, but compared to shoes that had zoom air on the forefoot and the heel, like the Kyrie low 2s and 3s, they actually felt like they had a better balance. The heel was pretty low as well, but it didn't feel as sunken as this one. In terms of the zoom step-in comfort, it feels pretty rigid, like the zoom air you feel in the Soldier 10. Not as bad as Soldier 10, but the Kyrie low 1s. Remember, they had the heel zoom air, but you just feel like they were rigid, high density injected Phylon. That's kind of what it feels like. I mean, not that bad. You can get a sense of there's a zoom there, and it's very low to the ground. But yeah, its presence, you can speculate that it's there, but you can't really feel it. So that's pretty disappointing. The outsole pattern is also a little bit of a throwback to the Kyrie 5 and 6, but a little bit more aggressive compared to the 5 and 6. But I wish they would have continued with the traction pattern. There was a lot more space here, and the threads were thicker, and the grooves were deeper, like the ones they used in the Kyrie 7 and the Kyrie low 4s. So it's a little unfortunate, but hey, this is a much better traction than a lot of the garbage copy and paste traction we've seen in most of the recent Nike and Adidas models, especially when you compare it to the Kyrie 1. Kyrie 1's traction was a major disaster. Personally, I felt like the 2s and the 7s had some of the best traction. 4s was kind of people thought it was, some people loved it, some people hated it. I thought it was okay. So unfortunately, they decided to go back, take a step back. The insole is a very minimal ortholite type of insole, not too thick or thin. Nice little suede top layer to make sure your foot is stationed nicely and it forms to your foot depending on the pressure points. Even without the insole. Even if you put like a paper thin insole, you can actually feel the zoom strobel on the forefoot working nicely. And yeah, they've managed to coat the zoom strobel with some rough, starchy, stretchy, spongy material around it, so that the insole won't be sliding all over the place. So that's a nice little thought put in there by Nike, because remember the Zoom universe, the earlier models with Zoom strobel, if you switch the insole, or even if you use the insole that's given, you will feel that the shiny, slippery part of the Zoom strobel in contact with insole would make your foot slide a little bit. So nice update there on the part of Nike. It's really super narrow. I think this is one of the narrowest kyries I've seen so far. Yeah, at least go up a full size. If you have a really narrow foot and you feel like a really tight fit, still I would say go up at least half a size, because this is killer narrow. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. The outrigger is, I wish they actually had this thing at the bottom, not up here, because it doesn't do anything except to make it look fancy. Or maybe you're supposed to sharpen it and hurt other people with a little bit of a side slashing move. I have no idea, but it's basically fashion, all form, no function. And it's not, the base is not as wide as what we've seen in the Kyrie 6, so it's a little intriguing. As usual, the Kyries always have the rounded edges so that you're moving around and making those extreme cuts and stop movements while you're on the floor. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. The price point is not too bad. They'll be coming in a host of colorways. They do have this plasticky faux leather strap here, but it doesn't really do much because it's actually moving with the shoelaces, not being pulled by themselves. It's just there. It's just there. It doesn't do much. It's not like the strap from Kyrie 2s. I miss the strap from Kyrie 2s. But at the same time, they got rid of the unnecessary, useless straps that we've seen in the previous Kyries. So that's always a good move. Killer sinking heel flatness compared to the elevated forefoot. That's a deal breaker. But if you can get the right insoles to elevate your heel a little bit, and you find what works for you, like a denser heel insole, maybe you could give it a try. But if you like the GT Runs, which has that sinking, super soft React heel and that double layered Zoom Air on the forefoot, which elevates your forefoot, and you feel like that works for you, you don't mind the sinking heel sensation, which could be a risk, go ahead, you will love the Kyries.